Hi everybody, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm doing another video on desire and the way one can relate to desire on a spiritual path. I've spoken previously about indulgence and abstinence and what the happy medium is between those two approaches to desire if we want to relate to desire wisely. And you can find that content in the description below. I'll link it. Today I'm going to talk about some other ways that we might consider or reconsider our relationship with our desires and how we can make desire, rather than it serve as an obstacle to the spiritual path, work with it and transform it so that desire can be a tool for us to catapult ourselves to even greater heights on our spiritual journey. So as I've flagged already, in a lot of the traditional forms of spiritual development, such as in yoga, such as in Buddhist meditation, and the sorts of lifestyles that are associated with somebody pursuing those types of practices, desire is typically seen as an obstacle to be overcome. And it's something that you come up against in your quest to escape the difficulties of this material world in order to get to something more enduring, more truthful, more spiritual. And it can be really hard to go through life relating to desire in that way. So I'm going to propose ways of continuing to acknowledge that we have desires and enjoy the good things of the world that are truly good and wholesome, that don't have strings attached to them, but to do so in a way that still allows us to pursue a path where we look beyond the world to things of a spiritual nature. And in order to do this, one thing to bear in mind about desire is that we have a desire for something in the material world. We meet that desire, we satisfy that desire, and then the thing is gone, the feeling is gone, and the positive feeling that we had desired has gone. And so inevitably we need to move on to a new desire in order to try and recapture that feeling. And the longer we go on without satisfying whatever new desire we develop, the more we suffer. And so there is this inherent process in the search for desire where we are searching for an ultimate end to desire, because we don't want to continue just capturing something, an experience that we enjoy, and then losing it again. We don't want to continue going through life like that indefinitely. There is a deep desire, you might say, for all people to find a point where they don't have any more work to do, where they don't want after anything, and they have everything that they could possibly want. And people pursue that in the physical world, in the material world, but they always find that the thing that they acquire, which is supposed to be the thing that finally brings them perfect satisfaction, actually doesn't bring them that. It's not what they expected. It doesn't make them whole. And so there's that disappointment, and they continue to search. And as we search for desire, and new desires, and more desires, there is also a law of diminishing return. So we find one kind of desire, one thing that we like, and we satisfy that desire over and over again. It might be a type of food that we enjoy or what have you. But after a time, we'll start to get bored of that thing, because as something becomes familiar and the element of surprise is taken away from the experience of a thing, it becomes less desirable. And so, as the things that we enjoyed once before cease to bring us joy, the only way for us to combat that as we continue on in the world is to find a desire which is even more intense, and perhaps even more enduring, but certainly more intense than the desire that preceded it. And so we go through this process where we're seeking after always greater and greater desire fulfillment. But the world is not structured in such a way that we can indefinitely continue to find greater and greater desire and greater, more intense forms of happiness indefinitely. There's going to come a time where the well runs dry, so to speak, where we have reached a level of expectation of a certain level of satisfaction with the world that the world will not be able to meet. And so we will be incredibly disappointed with the life that we live, if we live that way. This path of constantly seeking after desire, as if desire could ever be satisfied in the world, and always wanting more of everything and the best experience, the most intense experience, eventually we're going to reach a point where we can't find that, and we will have ruined our ability to feel happy and to feel satisfied and to feel fulfilled, because we've set the bar so high that nothing will be fulfilling anymore. But what if there was a way to pinpoint an end to desire that was real? And what if there was a way of finding a type of desire that was everlasting and perfect and didn't diminish and didn't come to an end based on a change in circumstances and was very intense and pure? Well, if there was such a fulfillment to desire, then we might be able to convince that part of us which seeks after greater and greater desire to aspire instead to that ultimate fulfillment of desire. And as it so happens, there is such an ultimate fulfillment of desire, but it is not of the world. It is beyond this world. It is in union with the divine that we find that ultimate fulfillment. And when you frame the goal of spirituality in those terms, union with the divine is the ultimate fulfillment of desire, then instead of bashing desire over the head with a cane and saying, "Bad desire, you're a fetter to my spiritual development," we're instead convincing desire, oh, instead of looking for fulfillment over here, why not redirect that energy and look over here instead? And there you will find satisfaction. There you will find waters that you can always draw from, for they are the waters of life. Once you have tasted that union with divinity, that is the state of mystical participation, of spiritual ecstasy that comes with the goal of meditation and the fruit of yoga, once you have tasted that, all of the desires of the world will seem insignificant in comparison. When we taste how perfect and sublime the divine is and the experience of divinity is, we will find that we stop wanting many of the carnal pleasures that we once took for granted as the pinnacle of pleasure, because they simply will not be able to satisfy us as much as the divine does. And so instead of denying ourselves the physical world, we will find that our desire for the physical world naturally falls away at just the right time on our spiritual journey. And there is a way that we can make the divine not just an object of desire in its own right, but see the divine as the object in all the things that we do, even the most worldly tasks. If you think about it, everything in existence is an expression of desire. And the way that that operates in practice is that we live in a universe that is sundered into many parts. What once was a unified whole has become a number of separate individual things, but the separate parts of the whole still interact with each other, and they're still attracted to each other, and the parts of the whole are trying to reunify again always. And that is the nature of existence. All existence is desire, and the final objective of that desire ultimately is reunion with the divine unity from which all things came. So if you understand the universe in that way, you begin to realize that every desire that we have is really just an expression or a manifestation of the one true desire, which is the desire of the individual separate parts of existence to be reunified in the great divine order once again. And so if you can begin to understand desire in those terms, instead of just as an end in itself, in terms of just satisfying the ego, satisfying our own personal desires, then we have truly changed the way that we relate to desire, and we have begun to, rather than view desire as an end in itself, rather than viewing the fulfillment of material desires as ends in themselves that are inevitably going to be unsatisfying, we have instead set individual desires as cobblestones on a path towards an ultimate goal that is spiritual. And so the fulfillment of desire is a journey towards the divine. And so, if we have that attitude to desire, if we frame every desire that we have in terms of that bigger picture, we're going to search for desire that takes us closer to that ultimate goal and not further away. And so we will find the nature of what we desire transformed in the long term. The other way that we can incorporate living in a world of material desires and material needs that we must fulfill is through the work of karma yoga. This is a distinct topic that I will talk about in a video all on its own, but suffice to say that there is a difference between seeking to do things in the world for their own sake. This is along similar lines to what I was just talking about earlier in the video. There's a difference between fulfilling desire or doing things in the world for its own sake and dedicating a certain type of action or the fruits of one's labour in a particular endeavour to a higher cause, in this case to divinity. So what this issue is really about is finding meaning in existence, and how best to find a sense of meaning in the way that we fulfill desire. Because just flitting from one gratification of a material need to another doesn't have any greater meaning to it. it's completely pointless and it's completely futile. But if we live for something greater, if we live for a higher cause, which is either to find God in our own personal life, or better yet, to spread the light of the divine and divine love and other positive attributes of divinity throughout the rest of the world to other people, then that is an incredible higher purpose which is greater than any individual life, and which, if an individual life is dedicated to such a goal, can find incredible meaning in every moment and not get dragged down into the meaninglessness of physical life on its own terms. And so by having that higher purpose to aspire towards, we have a reason for engaging in material activity which otherwise might seem pointless. And so we can find an even greater satisfaction in living in order to strive towards divinity than we would simply just sating desire for its own sake. And once again, if that is our higher goal, then we will find that the kinds of activities that we engage in will change accordingly. Because there are certain types of activity which bring us closer to the divine than others. So that, broadly speaking, is the way that we can transform desire and use desire as a way of seeking a spiritual path, rather than just discarding desire or trying to deny desire. So I hope you enjoyed that video. What are your thoughts on some of the different ways that we can relate to desire on a spiritual path? I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. So feel free to leave a comment on this video. And if you want more content like this as usual, please, I ask that you like and subscribe. I'm going to do more videos on some of the underlying themes to do with the way we relate to the world and how to introduce spirituality into the mix with that. So stay tuned. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.